Hello, everyone. My name is Verdel Jones, and I am one of the co-founders for the Black Authors Festival at Sag Harbor. And I am so excited to start this conversation with one of our honorees for the Black Authors Festival. We're going to be talking to Dr. Patricia Turner. She is a folklorist who documents and analyzes the story that defined the African American experience. She is a professor in world arts, cultures, dance, and African American studies at UCLA, and the author of 5 books, which range in topics including rumors, legends, and conspiracy theories to African American quilters and images of African Americans in popular culture. She is the 2021 recipient of the Linda D. Lifetime Achievement Award for Legend Scholarship, and her latest book is called Trash Talk: Anti-Obama Lore and Race in the 21st Century. So I'm excited to talk to her about that. Dr. Turner's commentary on issues related to race in America, she sought out for this, and she has been on major outlets in print, in radio, television, and online journalists as well. Some of them are the New York Times, the Boston Globe, the New Yorker. She's been on TV appearances with NBC News, CBS News, The O'Reilly Factor, and 2020 as well. So she has really, when someone wants to discuss issues concerning race and in her particular field, she's right there, or African American history in general. She has taught in the University of California system for more than 30 years. She is a leader in the higher education field. She's serving in the vice provost and dean roles, and she's very active in professional societies devoted to folklore and oversees the UCLA Author Ash Legacy Project. Although she spends most of her time in Los Angeles, she is strongly connected to Long Island, and how befitting. Patricia Turner, it is an honor to have you here.
It is an honor to be here, Verdel, and an honor to be here with you as a former student.
Yes, we were sharing before we went on. I had Dr. Turner, a long time ago. We don't want to date each other, so I'm just going to say it was a while ago. It was before she was in California, so that gives you some indication. And she had such an amazing impact on me academically. I had her for Intro to Black Studies, and that sparked my interest and my love to get further knowledge when it comes to learning about my own culture. So again, I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
So let's get into it, because time is short and you have so much knowledge and information that I want to share a little bit about, a little bit of that with people who are watching. So what was your journey to becoming a sought after thought leader in African American history, and more specifically, being nationally recognized as a folklorist?
Well, thank you so much. And journey started in Sag Harbor. I went from kindergarten to 12th grade in what was a very good public school. Even though there was very little attention to African American studies paid, it really in any curriculum in those days. I remember an English teacher who required that we do a paper our junior year on an author, and a paper our senior year on a movement in literature. And I went to her and asked her if I could do Langston Hughes, the eminent poet from the Harlem Renaissance, of course, who it turns out, and I didn't know this then, had summered in Sag Harbor once upon a time, and the Harlem Renaissance as my senior year project. Mm-hmm. So I did get encouragement and a lot of the foundation for moving forward from the school system here, from the public library, from terrific parents. Mm-hmm. My turning point really came in graduate school when working on something like Langston Hughes, as satisfying as that was, it didn't hit all of the buttons. Mm-hmm. And I realized after I took a folklore course, or during a folklore course, that my parents were, my father was a farmer, my mother was a maid. They didn't read Langston Hughes. They didn't read any poets. They didn't read Black literature, but they had literature. Proverbs were the discourse of our house. They quoted from the sermons in church on Sunday. They sang gospel music. And that's what folklorists study, the material of everyday life. And when I made that connection, I knew that that was the path within African American studies that was for me.
Mm, interesting. I like the way you break that down. So in it's the telling, it's the story as you share with your parents, singing gospel music, the proverbs, and all of that. So when you look at a folklorist, what types of stories do you tell about the African American culture?
So it's a wide range of materials in the narrative tradition. It can be the folk history stories, the accounts that people tell of their families or their communities or their churches. It can be tall tales. It can be folk tales, jokes, conspiracy theories. Two of my early books were on the stories we tell each other
Hmm.
that really don't have a basis in evidence but have a real potency.
Mm.
And so that's the lore we talk about.
So is it like you see things like urban legends? Is it like urban legends kind of things as well?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
For,
Okay.
for me, that's been one of my niches, but I wouldn't want the audience to think that it's always that narrow, right?
Right,
But
got it.
that, that's when I entered the field, a lot of the more senior scholars said it would be great if one of you young Black folklorists took this up,
Got it.
and so I
Hmm.
did.
So, there's been so much in the news related to Black American history, African American history, from accusations that the College Board took out or omitted critical topics in their Black Studies AP course, to the governor supporting the notion that slavery was good for Black people. What is the importance of truth in sharing and telling our history, and more importantly, how can we make sure that that happens?
I think you're absolutely right. We have to be completely vigilant about it. And one of the things that this episode has revealed is if you start to take it for granted that students are going to cover African American history in high school and college, that it's going to be a part of the curriculum, and you sort of let your guard down, there are going to be people who will capitalize on that. You use the example of the governor of Florida, who sees that as an opportunity to mobilize a particular kind of voter who lacks a respect or an understanding for the full range of the American experience. The African American experience is the American experience. And if you want American youth to be educated, they should be educated about the totality of it and equipped to interpret and analyze and make their own decisions based on their exposure to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the critical piece in that, I went to a College Board conference. It was what was it called? A Dream Deferred, and they talked about the African American Studies AP course, and there was some controversy surrounding that, but I was pleased to know that they spent a lot of time getting these materials together to actually have a course that's all about African American studies. So even though there was some controversy around it, and they will share that the whole story is not true. What you've heard in the news, they are those pieces still there. I'm just happy that they did have this. They do have this course that our students can take advantage of, and hopefully schools will offer the course to our students as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely very, very needed. So let's get into your book. I love the name. Trash Talk, anti-Obama lore and race in the 21st century. What is it about? I looked at some of it, and there was some things that I couldn't believe that they really were a thing. So what is the book about?
So, from the point at which Barack Obama nominated John Kerry in 2004 for the presidential nomination until today, Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle, and now their daughters have been demonized in certain communities and trashed with inaccurate or completely false information that speaks to every part of the Obama's identities. So President Obama's religious affiliation is one that people are quite familiar with, the belief that circulating that he's Muslim. His citizenship, think about what your identity is. It's your citizenship, it's your religion, it's your sexual orientation. Some people are less familiar with the accusations that he was known as Bathhouse Barry during his time in Chicago, and that he frequented gay bathhouses, and that in his decision to run for president required him to get rid of former lovers who would have the potential to embarrass him. Throughout his presidency, things related to his policies, the notion that he canceled National Prayer Day, that he gave preference to Muslim leaders, that he wanted the Ebola virus to afflict American soldiers in Africa so that they could bring it back to the United States and spread Ebola throughout the United States, then enabling it to be repopulated by Muslims. Throughout the Trump, and still today, but largely throughout the Trump administration, the notion that he had stayed in Washington after his second term to run a deep state from his home and control bureaucrats placed in government agencies so that his agenda could be continued. That he had conspired with the Prime Minister of Italy in 2016 to be able to sabotage Dominion voting machines in 2020 to prevent to transform Democratic votes, Republican votes into Democratic ones, explaining the election in 2020. So from the very beginning of his appearance on the national scene until today, because I could go online today and find current examples of this material being disseminated. This has been a part of the far right's agenda against him and against America, because the part of the title of my book that's "And Race in the 21st Century," the Obamas exemplify to many Americans, and I don't want to limit it to African Americans, but to many Americans, the successes of the civil rights movement. And what happens when families like Michelle Robinson's invest all of their energy in their children's education and provide a good home for them, and they make it to the legal world, the educational world. People like me, my mother was a maid, my father was a farmer, and I'm a professor who was a dean and a vice provost. That's progress to so many Americans and what people fought for and continue to fight for. But to others, it is frightening, and they're scared, and there is a sense that if I have achieved something, if Barack Obama has achieved something, it's taken something away from a white person, that they have a view of the world that we folklorists call limited good. If one person has benefited in some way, someone else, that's been taken from someone else.
And that's, when the Obamas were in office, it was such an example for my children who are, just seeing that example. And I always share with them, there has to be some kind of Obama effect for that generation to see them, just excellence in a beautiful family and a loving family. And they had, intergenerational family, just such an example of what you can strive for, as a Black person, and it is attainable. So it's just so shocking that it's not really shocking, but it's just very, that these things happen and they still, like you said, go on now. And he's been out of office for a number of years, and it still continues. So when people pick up your book, what do you hope that they get out of it? What can they gain from this information?
I think it enables people to understand a little bit about what happened in 2016. A lot of people claimed to have been so shocked by the identity of the 45th president. But if you'd been paying attention, I argue in the book, if people had been paying sufficient attention to the channels, the back channels through which this lore was being perpetuated, there were, there were times when YouTube videos, the one that I mentioned about the Italian prime minister, got something like 4 million hits in 20 minutes. And so there was a tendency, people were aware, oh, there are people out there, these crazy fringe people who say that Barack Obama is not a citizen of the United States. And they're this marginal, really weird kind of a small set of a group. No, they weren't. It wasn't a small number of people. It was a significant number of people, and they were in electorally significant states. And so we need to understand that, and we need to be prepared for the next time a candidate comes along and be better able to manage that situation.
Navigate that, absolutely, to have the information to, and I love what you said about a lot of people think these are fringe. They're really not.
No.
And it's just fascinating how polarized we are at this point. After President Obama was in office, it was as if there was a plot to to make believe none of this really happened.
Exactly. And another point is that part of what happens with the dissemination of this material is people figure out a way to capitalize. People figure out a way to make a living off spreading this information now in the days of the internet. It was true a little bit of the material before the internet. But if you look at, again, the birther beliefs, there were people who used their ability to circulate those beliefs to support themselves financially, their whole income, their whole livelihood. They were professional birthers. And one of the most well-known of them, after Obama's out of office and he can't ask people for contributions to send him to Hawaii to do research on Obama's birth certificate, he becomes a rideshare driver because his whole source of income has gone away. You could argue that Donald Trump, in perpetuating these beliefs, exploited them for a commercial motive. So I think it's also important for people to understand that aspect of this material.
Absolutely. Money drives a lot of things.
Yeah.
It really does. So you have the connection to Sag Harbor, and again, just fascinating. So I'm so excited that we are honoring you at our inaugural Black Authors Festival, and you're very familiar with this area. So, what is the historical significance of Sag Harbor for Black people?
Oh, we could do a whole interview again. I could set you up with people who could talk about it. But Sag Harbor, from its original notoriety in the 19th century, came from the whaling industry. And many of the workers on the whaling ships were African Americans. So we've got all the way back. People forget about African Americans in the North often during the 19th century. We have across the sound from us in Sag Harbor, Shelter Island, and many of the people who live in Shelter Island also, are a part of Sag Harbor, including slaves who came to work on a provisioning plantation in Shelter Island. And as they are emancipated and as their children come forward, they move to Sag Harbor in what's called the Eastville area, which is also home to a Native American population that's significant. This area gets discovered in the 1920s by African Americans from New York City and other East Coast urban areas as having potential for second home possibilities. It's near a beach. The real estate is affordable. There's some real movers and shakers who start buying property, and we end up with several distinct neighborhoods of African Americans, largely, not exclusively, because my family was a year-round family and all of that, but largely of African Americans. So it's a rich history that goes back, as I say, a couple of centuries now.
And your next project that you're going to be working on touches on all of that, right? So
Yeah.
hear what your next project is.
So Sag Harbor is next door to Bridgehampton, which has a African American community with slightly different roots. In Bridgehampton, rural agriculturally based individuals from the South, largely from Southampton County in Virginia, migrated in the 1920s and 1930s, really into the 50s and 60s, often working in agricultural pursuits, laboring pursuits for the potato farms and the duck farms in Bridgehampton. And that was how my parents originally came to be in Bridgehampton. This is not the affluent population we associate with Sag Harbor. These are people who were picking potatoes, driving trucks, women like my mother who were domestic workers in households. Many of the women, aunts of mine, worked in the potato fields as well. So we have in this very, very small area such a range of African American experience, from the rural agricultural to the more upper middle class, well-educated. One of my neighbors in Sag Harbor was the first African American, the United States ambassador to Liberia, Edward Dudley, was my next door neighbor in Sag Harbor. But in Bridgehampton, my parents' neighbors were people they knew in Virginia who were truck drivers and much more blue collar professions. All of that is in this little area, and it may be folly on my part, but I want to document and celebrate those communities.
Right. It's such a rich history. Every time people talk about out east, and I'm in central Long Island, western Suffolk, Long Island. So that is really out east. Yeah. But you hear about the potato farms and how we work on the potato farms, and that rich history and that rich culture, and it really just develops what it is today. And I know there's gentrification everywhere, and there's gentrification in that area. Now that area is appealing to a lot of people because of the things you mentioned, the beach, and it really is. Now it's so, it's like Martha's Vineyard, same type of vein, where people want to be there. So where can people find your book, and how can they stay connected with you?
Well, I have a website, doesn't everybody these days? So Patricia A. Turner, you can find me there. My book, I encourage people to patronize independent bookstores, Black-owned bookstores. They're so important, I think. But obviously, you can get it on Amazon, and you can get it from the major sellers as well. And the whole enterprise of reading is a little bit suspect now. So, I don't really care where you get the books that you get. The fact that people are spending their money on books, I think, may be what's important overall.
So we are honoring you for our Black Authors Festival that is going to be in Sag Harbor. Again, a place you are very familiar with. The Dr. Patricia Turner Jalimuso Award is going to be given in your honor. And moving forward, it will be an award that will be given in your name. And that word, Jalimuso, and I'm not good at pronunciations, but it is considered a griot. And a griot is a teller of stories. And Dr. Turner, you have been telling our stories for many years about our ancestors, and they are definitely smiling down on you for just remembering what they did and how they were able to bring us to where we are today. So I want to thank you so much for this conversation. It has been such a pleasure. The information and the knowledge and the history that you share is so important, and it cannot be said enough how much we appreciate that. So thank you, and thank you for this conversation.
Thank you. It's been terrific to talk to you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Black Authors Festival in Sag Harbor, we would like to honor Dr. Patricia A. Turner. The award says, the Dr. Patricia A. Turner Jalimuso Award presented to Patricia A. Turner, PhD. Like a circle, the pursuit of preeminence has no end. We pay homage to your commitment to excellence.
Well, Verdel, thank you so much. I am so honored to receive this award, and the meaningfulness of being the recipient of the award in Sag Harbor. You know, it's an award about my books, and I learned to read in Sag Harbor. I learned to write in Sag Harbor. You could walk to the school, to the library, to my home from where this event is being held. So it represents the foundations that I was able to take to college, to graduate school, to the academy for moving forward. I'm doubly thrilled to be receiving it from someone who graced one of my classes once upon a time, because everyone in your audience who's ever had anything to do with the field of education knows that the biggest gift back to us is to see that the material that we labor over on our desks, in our archives, in our research facilities, that we share with our students pays off for them. So this is about moving that forward, and I'm very humbled and very honored to receive the award.